The Justice Beat is where we discuss all things justice.
Conspiring to make your dreams a reality.
Good morning, and welcome to the Justice Beat Talk Show for another installment. We're so glad to have you joining us today across all social media platforms. Today's topic is ending money bonds, the Illinois Pretrial Fairness Act. Today we have with us Akeisha from Seoul, welcome, and Sarah from Chicago Appleseed. Thank you so much for joining us. Let me give you a little bit of background on Seoul. Seoul is working to build a movement to create change. We have keenly listened to communities that we serve to develop a shared vision. They have also dedicated or are dedicated to the belief that all people deserve decent and affordable housing, access to healthy, nutritious food in every neighborhood, and a sanitary environment where people will be able to breathe clean air, drink clean water, where they are able to work and create full-time employment economies so that everyone, despite the color of their skin, their economic demographic, or criminal history, has the opportunity to work across the gainful, sustainable living wage employment. We believe that good quality public education is a right and not a privilege. And we are committed to ensuring that public funds are leveraged fairly to invest resources in communities that need them the most and not redistributed to keep local economies beholden to corporate greed. Chicago Appleseed is a volunteer-led collaborative nonprofit organization advocating for fair, accessible, and anti-racist courts in Chicago, Cook County, and across the state of Illinois.
Let's expand the clearing.
Welcome, ladies.
Entire neighborhood, up to 11 miles away.
All right. Now,
emotions, thoughts,
one of the things that most impressed me was the comprehensive nature of this Pretrial Fairness Act. I mean, I'm trying to think of any other ones that I've seen that really are this comprehensive, but more importantly, you guys had over 100 organizations a part of your coalition.
Yeah,
Let's talk about, I mean, over 100, and that's there are some across the country, but not many that are able to bring together such a large coalition. Let's talk a little bit about what it was like to work with the thousands of people that came to the table to those coalitions, and how you managed to walk away and with some type of collaborative piece of policy that everyone pretty much agreed on. What was that process like?
Share it with everyone that you encounter.
You want to answer that one, Sarah?
Akeisha, Sarah, this is a conversation, so jump in.
Yeah,
Sure.
I wasn't part of the until a year ago. So Sarah probably answered that more clearly.
Okay.
Sure, yeah. So it was a very long process. Organizing around money bond and ending money bond in Illinois started almost a decade ago. The first group of organizations that was brought together was called the Coalition to End Money Bond, which was a mostly Cook County group, a mostly Chicago group. And that happened in 2015, 2016. In 2018 and 2019, we realized, Illinois is a huge state. It's more than just Chicago. The issues that were caused by money bond were not just Chicago issues. They were issues from across the state. So that is when we started the Illinois Network for Pretrial Justice, which is the organization that covers, we have, I'm going to say the wrong number, but it's going to be, we have dozens and dozens of organizations across the state in different communities, big cities, little cities, rural communities, all of whom are committed to the same goals. In terms of getting everybody on the same page, we do everything collaboratively. We do everything by consensus. So we meet a lot, like a lot. We meet a lot. We meet for a long time when we meet, to make sure that everybody is really educated on everything that's going on, can make really sort of informed, thoughtful conversations. And then, we really have put in the work, I think, and this is really a testament to the amazing organizers who are central to this work. We really put in the work to make sure that, we did this by consensus. When we were building the law, every decision about, okay, well, how far do we go on this provision, and what are we going to take out of this provision, and how is this all going to work? We did all of that by consensus with all of the organizing partners, all of the policy partners, anybody who wanted to be involved around the state. So it was a labor of love, but it's really paid off. The amount of support we have for this law is amazing, and we have partners all over the state who are excited to get it off the ground.
Right. With 100 organizations, typically everybody has a specific agenda, because most organizations have their own specific mission and what they're focused on. In organizing this and trying to achieve consensus building, what did it look like in the planning process? Did each organization take a piece of this and help craft it based on where they landed in terms of their areas of expertise?
So what we did early on was we created a set of principles about pretrial fairness, which you can find on our website, which we could get everybody to commit to. That was the first thing that we did, or one of the first things that we did, so that everybody, we all have different priorities, we all have different agendas. Some of us are 100% criminal justice organizations, some of us are not. That's fine, but we all agree that in this space about this issue, we agree on the following principles. And that way, when we were when we did need direction, we could fall back on, okay, well, what did we all agree to begin with? Right. And what are those principles? How can we build out of those principles? So every time we do a major report, every time we make a major decision, it's like, okay, well, what do our principles say? Okay, let's go back to remind ourselves what we all agreed on, and then let's move forward.
And that's what I was trying to get at, was how did you keep everybody on task, on the same page? Because 100 organizations, different missions, etc. It could have been derailed at any point if you couldn't get that consensus, and that principle outlining that you're talking about is a great model, a great approach to this. Akeisha, as a lead organizer, and I know you said you've been with them about a year.
Yes.
Okay. And so that meant you would have had some role in this particular piece of legislation, right?
Yeah,
What was your role as a lead organizer?
So I came on to Soul and the coalition to end money bond in the implementation phase. So fortunately, I came at a very high energy point. We had just passed the bill, which is always exciting in your first role out of grad school to be part of such a momentum and like reforming piece of legislation. But my role so far has been helping with the education piece. Like we have a lot of people on the South Side, which is our target group of Soul, on the South Side and the West Side, who are Black and Brown, who will be impacted by this legislation, helping them understand, like, what does this law mean? You know, you see the bill itself, it's full of legalese, but they need to know how this will impact them in the next year, in the next 3 years.
Right. So this passed on January 13th, 2021. And so you answered my next question, because I was going to say, what is happening in this year, which I figured would be implementation planning for it to take effect in 2023. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm, that's correct.
So what does the implementation activities look like on the ground?
So for me as an organizer, it's mostly being trained on teach-ins and providing teach-ins so we can expand how many people can talk about this in a way that's like accessible to our target groups. And we also do a lot of support. We drive a lot of support towards our legislators so they know that this bill is something that the communities want. So we do a lot of canvassing efforts. I said before, the teach-in, we do some flyering. We have some community conversations, because while the community understands that this bill could impact them positively, I think a lot of people who are most directly impacted by incarceration feel very far from policy sometimes. They're like, it doesn't really impact our lives. So breaking it down and coming back to them like, you all asked for this and here we are delivering it. Let them know that we're still standing with them as we like implement it. We're still wanting their feedback. We're still making sure that they feel like they're secure.
Okay. How do you reach the younger group, like teenagers, with understanding this piece of legislation and how it impacts them?
Yeah, good question. We go to where they are. So we have organizers who are dedicated to student outreach in particular. So we're going to the schools, we're going to the group meetups, we're going to like the college quad days. Myself, I do jail support. So I'm right there on the ground. People are getting out of jail and talking about this bill as well. Things like that. Yeah, we go where they are.
Okay. Now let's give our audience a quick synopsis of what the Pretrial Fairness Act is. Can you do that, Sarah?
Sure. So the Pretrial Fairness Act completely eliminates money bond from the way that we make a decision about who is in jail and who is not, and replaces it with a system that basically ensures that as few people are in jail as possible. That's the goal of the bill. The goal of the bill has always been, eliminating money bond is great, but if what we do doesn't decrease the number of people in jail, we haven't succeeded, right? So the whole bill is structured so that the number of people in jail total is going to go down. And so just to give you like a 5-second version, the way it does that is it makes sure that there are only certain charges, only certain things that you're charged with where jail is even an option when you appear before a judge for the first time. So for example, if you're charged with like a low-level drug possession case, if you're charged with theft, if you're charged with actually any drug case, if you appear before a judge, jail's not on the table. The judge can't put you in jail just because they feel like it or because of all of the reasons, including lots of racist reasons that we know that people end up in jail, even if they're charged with something that means they pose no real danger to anybody. And there's no reason that we would even be thinking about jail, right? For the small sliver of cases where jail is on the table, there's a hearing process that really puts the burden on the prosecutor and says, you need to prove to the court that this person poses a specific, real, and present threat to another person. Not just some general feeling that a person, might be a bad person, which really is how we do it now, right? Judges are just like, I think you're a bad person, so I'm going to put you in jail. A lot of it is that simple. So this hearing process makes sure that, no, there has to be a specific, real, and present threat to another person. If there is, okay, we can talk about whether jail is appropriate. But if there's not, jail isn't on the table.
Okay. To attain this higher refined standard, it's important. Now, now that this is in place, how does this impact? Is it retroactive in any respects, like for folks who are currently incarcerated, or does this move forward?
So it sort of, it affects people. It will affect everybody who's in the pretrial system the day it goes into effect.
Okay.
So if you're in jail on a money bond that you can't post on January 1st, that's a condition of your release that's keeping you in jail that is going to become an illegal condition. And so everybody who's in jail on a money bond should be able to go before a judge and get a new hearing under the new law. Or if they're not eligible for jail, which there are a lot of people like that, be released.
Okay. Okay. Do you know of any other states that have had such a major impact in this area? And in the manner in which you all were able to pull it together through this coalition, did you do any advanced work with other states, collaborate in terms of what they may have done? And if so, what were those states?
Yeah. So although we are the first state to fully 100% eliminate money bail, we're following in the footsteps of DC and New Jersey. Those are like the biggest, also New York and California, but DC and New Jersey are the most comprehensive in terms of getting rid of money bail. DC hasn't had money bail since the 80s.
Yeah.
But New Jersey got rid of money bail in the mid 2010s. And we talked to them a lot about how their law is structured, both about what works about it and what doesn't work about it, and really tried to make sure that our law goes further than New Jersey's law does.
Okay.
And that was important to us, so that, you know, we're always taking a step forward on the path to, you know, the ultimate goal, which is no one should be incarcerated pre-trial.
Right. And so based on what you gleaned from their efforts, how much progress have they made in terms of being able to evaluate or assess the impact of their efforts in those states? Has it been positive?
So yes, they've reduced their jail population substantially, and there's been no rise in crime, no rise in you know, arrests of people who are released pre-trial. It has been, in sort of all the measures that we would care about, it's a roaring success. And it's, you know, it's something that when we hear people start to say, well, the sky's, you know, it's like we hear like, it's like the sky is going to fall when money bail goes away. It's like, no, like there are other states that have done this, and we've been able to reduce the jail population successfully, and there certainly hasn't been a crime wave, and there hasn't even been a change in there hasn't even been a statistically important change in things like failure to appear, like those kinds of measures. It turns out most people come to court if you give them appropriate support, and most people come to court, you don't have to give them anything. They're going to come to court anyway, right? And most people are not going to get rearrested pre-trial. So, you know, that's one place we can look to say, you know, we're pretty sure that the sky's not going to fall when money bail goes away.
Right. So in this piece of legislation, do you all have a component written in for monitoring and observation?
Yes, there's a board created by the bill called the Pretrial Data Oversight Board, which is already exists and is working right now, basically to create the monitoring system. Right now, our data about what's going on pretrial in Illinois is terrible. Every county is different. We have so many counties in Illinois. We have 102 counties in Illinois, and every county is different. So that group is pulled together and is creating a system where the whole state will enter all their data into the same, you know, system where we can actually look at the impact overall. And, you know, in Chicago, we have a little bit more information. We're a little bit ahead of the game there. And yeah, we're ready to have that conversation, because we know our opponents are going to be pulling out numbers and claiming all sorts of things. So we really have to be ready to fight back.
Exactly. And because this piece of legislation would really be useless if you didn't have a monitoring component, because a lot of legislations that get passed, and especially in the justice reform space, they must have monitoring, because how do you how do you put checks and balances in place to make sure what's supposed to be happening is happening, and then have a way to also collect that data so you can just pose the pre and the before and after efforts. So that's a good thing.
Yeah. We're also putting together a court watching effort, which is starting now and will continue afterwards, which is like, okay, data is important, but data doesn't tell the whole story. So we are training people to be in the courtroom, gathering stories, seeing what's happening, so that we can show the impact of the bill. So that's something that's like just getting off the ground now, but I think by the end of the year, we've gotten great volunteer response on it. And so I'm hoping that, we really will have a lot of people who will be able to do that.
So is that like a court observers program?
Yeah.
Okay, that's nice. That's nice. And so you want to tell the story. So what are your plans for the storytelling piece?
I'll let Keisha take that one.
Okay.
Storytelling.
So so you're asking what's our storytelling about bond overall? What story trying to tell about the implementation process? Can you just ask it?
Well, I think I think the whole process would be interesting. I mean, the bond piece, the lives impacted, efforts. Yeah,
okay, that makes sense. So our story, so obviously we started with bond, but bond's only the entry point in the overall problem with the pretrial system, right? And we feel like bond is what we targeted because it's easily understandable as an injustice. And you can look and see, why would somebody be jailed for amount of money they cannot pay? Like, why are we calling people to like pay ransom for their freedom? And it's a kind of point that really it's easy to drive home with folks. And then it really exposes that there are these vast disparities in our system. So you look at like how many people are incarcerated pre-trial in Illinois versus other places in the nation. Ours is so high. When we pull that back and look at what kind of people are going to be incarcerated pre-trial, we see that exposes like racial injustice, LGBT injustice, economic injustice. We see all that there. So by targeting money bond, we take an important step forward in like Black liberation and equity. And so we targeted that lens. And then we're going to see that there are other things you can put in place that really promote community safety outside of this bond program. So we're going to see, once it goes into place, that crime rates will not go up. We're going to see that reoffense rates do not go up. And we already have data to back that up. And seeing it in real time, we think is going to help people see like what are the real things you can put in place to promote community safety.
Okay. Do you think you'll have narratives, like visual narratives, come out of your storytelling?
Yes, we had some already in order to pass the bill. People talking about the great burden of trying to pay money bond, but they have to sacrifice to pay what we might think are small amounts of money, and really show that there is no amount of money that you can give someone that everyone can pay. Some folks are incarcerated for literally $100, right? That comes out, and then we're going to see after implementation how people's lives have been greatly improved and how their efforts to engage in the community have stayed in place, right? So we're going to come back to them and ask them like, how has life been improved? How are you feeling more safe, etc. That the money bond is off the table.
Okay. Can you talk about any next steps? Well, let me do this first. I want to go back for a moment and look at the areas within the bill or the legislation, and you guys just give me a little synopsis about why it was important to include this. So let's talk about the limits. It limits eligibility for pretrial incarceration. What is that about? And what we're doing, audience, is we're going through the components of this legislation that were very important and central to get this passed.
So that issue, like that part of the legislation is what makes Illinois legislation unique, and it's so important. So, right now, judges have all of the discretion. They can make whatever decision basically they want about who's in jail and who is not, because they can just set an amount of money, right? You can't pay it, you can't pay it.
Right.
So we knew that in a system, if we switched to a system without money bond, where judges still had all of the power to say, well, you're in jail and you're not in jail, no matter what you're charged with, no matter what your circumstances are. If judges still had all that power, unfortunately, we have a century of experience about how judges are going to use that power if they have it. So you've got to split up that power.
Yeah.
You've got to make sure that judges don't have all of the power over every single person. And the truth is, like, we have to, as a society, realize, like, people are arrested for such a huge amount of behavior, much of which is not harmful, much of which comes out of poverty, much of which comes out of circumstances, and it just shouldn't be on the table.
Right.
That some people should be incarcerated just because they got arrested for something. It just shouldn't be on the table. And that's what it's like. Technically, we call it a detention eligibility net, sort of thinking about like who can get caught in the net of jail, right? And making sure that not everybody can is a big part of the way we are confident that this legislation is going to decrease the jail population.
Okay. What about the piece on risk assessments? Why is that important?
Yeah. So what we know about risk assessments, right? Risk assessments are, for those who don't know, are algorithms. They're like equations that basically take a bunch of facts about someone, usually their criminal history as the biggest fact, but sometimes other stuff, sometimes everything from like employment to substance use, all sorts of stuff, and throw it into an algorithm and spit out a number that says this person is high risk or medium risk or low risk in terms of whether they're going to appear in court, in terms of whether they might get rearrested. What we know is that those tools are racist. Bad info in, bad info out. If you're looking at who gets convicted of crimes, more Black and brown people get convicted of crimes, not because they commit more crimes, but because our system is racist. And so we know that those tools can be very dangerous if they're over relied on. So what we do in the bill is we make sure that any risk assessment that is used has to be transparent. You have to know how that equation works. What is it that's getting put in and what is it that's getting spit out? And make sure that people have the ability to challenge what that is, right? Challenge how they're being assessed, and give their lawyers the ability to do that. So that's a big part of what that does. We're still, I think, fighting against risk assessments in Illinois. We still are trying to make sure that their presence is as small as possible, because we know that they can perpetuate racist outcomes.
Exactly. I like the piece on giving the law enforcement the ability to release. Can you talk a little bit about that? This bill authorizes the release by law enforcement based on certain factors or conditions.
So it actually does more than authorize it. It requires it in certain circumstances. So if you're charged with something really, really small, we call them class B and C misdemeanors or petty offenses in Illinois. I mean, that's like things like trespassing and jaywalking and other stuff that we know is only enforced against Black and brown people who are unhoused. You know, those are the kinds of arrests that just are absolutely, you know, they just don't, it doesn't involve any harmful behavior.
Exactly.
Unless someone poses an obvious threat to another person in the situation that they're in, or an obvious threat to their own safety, police can't arrest. They have to issue a ticket instead. And the goal is, we know that all police contact is harmful. Police contact is harmful if it's for 5 minutes. It's harmful if it's for 2 hours. It's harmful if it's for 2 days, right? And so we want to make sure that people, that we stop people from even going into the station to begin with, if it's something really minor. And then we also give the ability for police to release people who are charged with more serious offenses, if that's a program they want to set up. Like, basically right now, if you're charged with even a low-level felony or a serious misdemeanor in Illinois, you have to go before a judge. You have to be held overnight in the police station. And this bill instead gives law enforcement flexibility, and not that I'm sure that law enforcement will take that flexibility, but it gives us as organizers the ability to push law enforcement to say, you have the power to release people. You don't have to hold overnight. And you should.
Okay. What about the penalties for violating pretrial conditions?
Sure. And Akeisha, please jump in. I feel like I'm talking a lot. Please jump in. But yeah, I mean, right now, if you violate the terms of your pretrial conditions, you are incarcerated. You can be incarcerated till trial. No ifs, ands, or buts. No real process to make sure that that's fair. And that's ridiculous. Because we know that people are accused of violations that are totally baseless, and we know that a lot of people, the violations being talked about is failure to appear in court, right? And people fail to appear in court for all sorts of reasons. Many of them have to do with poverty or just like human, like sometimes people just plain forget, and that's not a reason to jail them. So we create a system where basically serious violations, like getting rearrested for a new felony, are treated very seriously, and not serious violations are treated not so seriously, and we put caps on what the punishment can be for those.
Family, friends, whoever might be visiting.
What about why was it important to include the requirement to reconsider detention and release conditions?
Yeah, I mean, that's important for a couple of reasons. One is that like we are moving to a system that kind of doesn't, money bond is a terrible system, but it does have a sort of, you could call it like an escape valve, where people can get released later on in the time that they're waiting for trial if they get the money together. Sometimes charitable bond funds get the money together, things like that.
Right.
We don't want to have a system when we get rid of money bond where the judge makes a decision and then you're stuck like for until trial, right? Instead, what we know is, the truth is, we know that jail doesn't keep people safe. We want to make sure that the courts pay attention to that. And every time someone comes back before the court, say, hey, is it really necessary to keep this person in jail anymore? Because the answer is often, we hope, going to be no. And we can actually have people have their detention reconsidered and give their lawyers a chance to argue like, hey, this person doesn't pose a threat to anybody. It's time to let them go home.
Okay. What about ensuring credit and movement for people on electronic monitoring?
I can answer this one.
Go for it.
Cool. So, okay, I feel like this one was really important based upon the stories that we were hearing from our community members. I'm focused on like the guaranteed movement first. So before this year, parts of our bill went into effect on January 1 of 2022. So prior to this, people under the Sheriff's Department EM, electronic monitoring or EM, were under there for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And people were getting infractions for things as simple as taking out their trash, right? Like infractions for things as human and understandable as being like, oh, there was an emergency with my pharmacy. I have to go get my medication, right? So now this will guarantee they have at least 2 days to do things that are sort of like necessary for life, like getting groceries, right? That helps them. And it's on top of their already granted requirements for working. So it won't have to be like double dipping, so different pockets. And then the next one is giving sentence credit. So right now we consider that electronic monitoring and home detention is incarceration, just not in the jail. So folks who get this and are ultimately found to be, innocent or guilty should get credit towards their sentence because they were incarcerated. And right now, before this bill went to pass, there was no guarantee that credit sentence will be given to them if they are given a different sentence or sentence at all. Is that clear?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think this is helping our audience be able to really embrace these components and more importantly, understanding why they were important to include and how it impacts the everyday person.
Yeah.
Reforms for the warrant process.
Yeah. Honestly, similar to the other one about like the stories that we've been told about people not knowing that they even have a warrant and then they're being arrested for having a warrant that they didn't know about. So now it gives the judges the ability to issue a warrant. So someone can appear in court within 48 hours voluntarily before going, we're going to arrest you for this warrant that you know that you had.
Okay, that's good. That's good. And the last one ensures transparency and oversight through data collection and publication. We talked about that. Okay. All right. Anything you want to add to this segment around the components of this legislation that we didn't touch on?
I think just overall, hopefully the viewers know that each of these key changes really impacts human beings. That's like policy feels so removed, but all of these things are put in place because they were really causing a burden on our community. People were truly losing quality of their lives because these things that the system could easily change and make more, people friendly, people oriented.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sarah, anything?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just echo that. Like, that's how we wrote this. We wrote this by sitting down with like communities and saying, what are the things about the pretrial system that don't work? I came into this work. I wasn't here at like the very beginning. I came in sort of halfway through. And before I did this work, I was a lawyer on the west side of Chicago for youth and young adults charged with crimes. And like that work and like the community partnerships that I have there, that informed so much of what I, cared about in this bill. Like in my mind, like the different parts you have, like in my mind, they have names attached to them, right? Like I know, like, because like it's like that's the part that like really messed up Andrew's life. That's the part that really messed up Deshaun's life. And like that's really, I think, how we we could have fixed a million different things about the criminal justice system, but like that's how we figured out what we needed to fix.
Okay. For regular citizens, our viewers, folks outside of Illinois, what can they do to start something like this in their state?
It's harder to ascend to higher states of consciousness.
We're gonna make it a ground. We need to sweep it across the country. What would you advise?
World are being exposed. All that is hidden.
I guess I can start. So I would start. They can start by looking at our current principles, and I think if they're not already engaged in talking to folks in their community who are directly impacted by pretrial fairness, like start there, like really making sure that they are meeting the individual needs of the folks impacted by their own system and letting them lead the conversation. So having community conversations, looking at the bill and talking to legislators in their districts who might be sympathetic to what's going on in Illinois and building up from there.
Okay.
Yeah, it starts with grassroots community groups. I think a lot of sometimes these things try to start from like the ivory tower and come down and be like, well, we're going to fix the system. You can't do it that way. I don't.
Right.
I think that you have to start with the community and start with what is it about your laws in your state that are unjust and hurting people and killing people. I mean, our system is deadly. And start there and start the organizing there, because if you don't have a base of people and organizations that are going to support you long term in this work, you can think all you want about the policy, but this bill got passed by organizers. That's who passed this bill.
Okay. All right. One of the things I keep thinking about is the way you guys were able to pull this off. Are you all sitting in any kind of position where you may provide training and technical assistance on how to do this? Consultation, advisement. Now, of course, any piece of legislation that a state would want to try to get passed would be central to the needs of that particular community, those communities in that state. But I think there are some core pieces here that are adoptable and replicable for other states to kind of look at to see how to get something like this done. What is your opinion on that?
Want me to go? Yeah, for sure. I think we are in that position. We already, we've had meetings with similar groups across the state to see.
Okay.
Yeah, that's happened since last year. We've been talking to other states who are interested in doing the same thing. We're like thought partners with them.
Good.
In particular spaces.
Internet service.
Yeah, I mean, reach out to us. Like we are, we're in a lot of sort of and pulled together groups of people from around the country, but info@endmoneybond.org is our like main email, and like seriously reach out to us, because we we're a big group, and there's somebody who would be able to have a conversation with you or help you out.
And that was info@endmoneybond. Dot-
right, but I'm right, Keisha, that's it. Let me
I'll put it in the chat. I can put it in the chat, or info@nmoneybond. Let me just pull it up, y'all, and I'm gonna say it at the end.
I'm on your site.
Okay.
It's inmoneybond.org. Yeah.
Okay. info@moneybond.org. That's
All
what
right.
you want to do.
Good. And as a matter of fact, the areas or core components of the act are listed on your site at inmoneybond.org. And there's a wonderful video that I watched that talked about the principles. So anyone that wants to go back behind this particular broadcast and look at it, you can find it at inmoneybond.org. Okay.
We also have a super active Twitter, so you can follow us at nmoneybond. And we post lots of updates and things like that.
All right, great. So we have reached our 10:45 mark, just about maybe a minute shy. And I want to check in with my production team and those who are monitoring social media platforms for any questions that may be coming in.
Good morning, it's Ruth.
Hey, good morning, Ruth.
Coming up. Thank you both for coming in today. And we did have some questions for you. Some of them I'm sure you've already spoken to them. So there's just a few to go through. So one was, does this affect anyone or everyone, juvenile justice on the way up? So anyone who potentially.
So unfortunately, yeah. So the way our system is structured in Illinois, this is a reform for the adult system, 18 and up. Juveniles there were a lot of reforms that happened to our juvenile system to decrease the number of people in juvenile detention a number of years ago. It's not perfect. We still need to do more, but these reforms are focused on the adult system.
Thank you for that. And I've got another one. When people complain that the money bail system is for their state funds, and I think you all touched on this a little bit, but what is your first response?
That is not how we should be paying for our state to run. Like, it's just, I mean, come on. Like, sorry, I don't mean to not take the concern seriously. It is an important concern for local governments, and we do have to make sure that they get the appropriate support, often like from the state government, for example, to make sure they can transition to a new system. But ultimately, like, money bond is ransom for people to get out of jail. We can't be funding our courts on the backs of people who have not been found guilty of a crime and on people who are the most vulnerable people in our society. We can't. That can't be the way that we fund our government.
And yet it is.
I know, right?
Next question. How do you change the minds of the folks who feel a person should have to pay their time, money, and servitude when, you know, I think the ideology is that they gotta suffer in order for them to actually come out of this better and for society to be better? What is the response there?
Yeah, it's a fair question, one that we get all the time. I think if you want to have like a one-on-one talk with somebody in your life who feels like that, I think we're talking to them about like punishment as a whole, right? Like, is it punishment that helps you get better, or is it community support? Was it punishment, or was it having what you needed? Like, was it really punishment, or is punishment just being used as a placeholder to avoid getting to the roots of our problems? That's how I would take that on. And then on like shifting people's mindsets on a larger scale, I think really looking at the current outcomes in the data, that we've been having the same system in place for so long and people are not more well, right? It just really is not the answer. But instead we put into place like systems of support, then we see the real changes, right? We see that there's a much different outcome when people simply have adequate housing, adequate jobs versus them being in prison while they wait for a trial.
Thank you, Akeisha. And then where can a person go to see the comparisons of, Illinois would be the easiest. Once, you have the before and after Moneyball is eliminated, where you see the differences, where can you find that information?
We will be putting,
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Yeah.
is one place to look. I mean, we're very committed to paying attention to that data and publicizing that data. It's something that matters a lot to us. So that's a good place to start. Follow us. There's going to be, we don't have before and afters yet because not after yet, but we're pretty excited for when we do.
Will the endmoneybond.org remain as your project website? Where you keep things updated, it will remain. Okay.
Potential financial ruin.
All right. Ruth, any other questions?
Oh, yes, we have more.
Oh, okay.
And let's see. I want to go ahead and get this one because it just came in just now. So they're probably watching and waiting. So what approach should grassroots groups take to get their attention of the legislatures?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I think it depends on what kind of grassroots they want to do. I think a really strong way is having stories from people in that legislator's district that are saying like money bond impacts me in a real way. Personal accounts and testimonies about the hardships caused by it. And if they're down, direct actions, right? Like really having that story in a way that is moving emotionally, I like helps. Y'all have seen some videos on our page about the impact of money bond, the burden of money bond, and I think that really moved our legislators.
You are among the trailblazers who are setting an example.
Thank you so much. Okay, there's some more. Why is police interaction characterized as harmful without interpretation? Is it always harmful without any regard to the reason for the engagement? That was a question we had in there as well.
I know you said the statement, Sarah. Do you want to answer first?
Yeah, I mean, it was my words, but yeah, I think that what we know is that policing, particularly in communities of color, has not been successful at addressing most or all of society's problems, right? It's not made us safer. It's not made people well. I think that's like, I really like your words there, Keisha. Like, it doesn't make people well. And we know that the stats are staggering in terms of the way that even brief police and jail interaction can derail somebody's life. 24 to 48 hours in jail is enough for most people to lose their jobs, sometimes lose access to their children, have really their whole lives disrupted. For all the when police are interacting, particularly, and I was talking about it in this context of these low level situations, these trespass and things like that, there's always a better community response that we could have. It'll take us a long time. It'll take us some time to get there. But I mean, I'm talking about police abolition. It'll take us some time to get there, but we need community responses instead of police responses.
Yeah, I completely agree with Sarah. And just to add to that, I think it's harmful in most situations because the police are not the appropriate resource the person needs. And keeping them from that resource for even like a moment longer is causing them more harm. So if you as somebody really just needs, maybe acute mental health support, the police can't provide that. So putting the police in the way of them getting to their true resource is setting them backwards.
Computer, laptop, tablet, router, modem.
Thank you for those answers. There's certainly a lot of thought behind all of this, and a lot of I'm looking at some of the questions too, and so pretrial fairness doesn't feel like an issue until it affects you. Are there stories or individuals and advocates that you can recommend that we all follow that we can share with our guests as well?
Lastly, let us remove any software that is contactable or programmable.
I'm thinking, and it's hard for me to call somebody in particular because I get most of my situations from people I know in my personal life, but I hear about this like on the street by going to the jail support. So I would recommend if they can engage with local mutual aid and engage with jail support, they can see it firsthand. They live in Chicago. Chicago Community Jail Support is awesome. They've been out on the front lines at 26 in California for 460 days. And every single day, people get out of that jail without what they need. And most times they're coming out pre-trial. So they want to see with their own eyes, come on out and volunteer with us.
Of all negativity, whether it be emotions, thoughts.
Thanks again. And also just a final background info from you two. How did you all get started in this advocacy.
To connect with your higher self and bring this love and wisdom down.
You want me to go first?
To share with the world in your
Sure.
own unique way.
Okay, so I was living in Missouri when I first heard about the Coalition to Money Bond, because the Missouri counties have a similar thing called the workhouse. I learned there that most people who were in the workhouse were there pre-trial, they were legally innocent. And when I got back home and started asking people in my community if they had been impacted by this, the answer was like, yes, right? Because a lot of people who look like me, Black women, are experiencing the consequences of like either having to bond themselves as unpayable or having to support like a brother, an uncle, a husband who is incarcerated. And that really moved me, especially when these are folks who I know were like important to their community, right? And then as COVID came up, I feel like COVID really showed that being incarcerated necessarily was literally a death sentence, and I couldn't not engage after that. So I started working at Soul, and Soul fortunately was already involved in this fight, and it's been great ever since.
Yeah, and I'm a lawyer, and I'm white and come from a very privileged background. So it really, I needed, the way I got into this work is I got close to harm. When I graduated from law school, I became a lawyer for like I said, youth on the west side of Chicago. I moved to Lawndale on the west side, and I listened a lot. I learned a lot by just being so close to that injustice and walking alongside people as they went through the court system. That radicalized me pretty quick, in terms of realizing that the system that we had caused so much harm.
What happens on the higher
So,
will eventually manifest in our
so Sarah, okay, so going to law school, the years in law school, do you all ever get a glimpse of the system? Like, I hear a lot of people say that once they come out, get their license and all of that, and they go into the system, they're appalled by what they are experiencing. But before then, when you're giving your life away to study for this law license, are you not exposed at any level to the realities of the system? Or is it just all theory in the books?
Not as much as we should be. I think that legal community's got a lot of work to do there.
Yes.
Because the stuff that I saw after law school, I mean, I didn't walk into a criminal courtroom in my own city until I graduated. I went to, that's not totally true, because I had one or two clinics that took me into courts, and I started to see it. But like, I should have seen that my first year. I should have been looking at that right when I was learning criminal law. And I mean, actually the court watching that we're doing, a lot of the people we're training are law students. And I think that that's actually, like, I'm really excited about that, because I think I would have realized what I wanted to do with my life a lot earlier in law school if I had seen what I saw after law school at the beginning.
And for me, that's experiential learning.
Yeah.
Hands-on experiential learning. But then also it would probably give them a sense of the contradictions and what they're being taught versus us playing out.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any other questions?
That's all that I had on my end. Thank you both.
Okay. Thank you, Ruth. Anyone else on the team with questions? All right. Well, we have reached our 10:55 mark, and I want to leave the last 5 minutes to our guests, Akeisha and Sarah, to give any announcements, updates, any books you're writing, webinars, seminars, trainings, any activities that you got going on that you want to share with our listening audience. And then how we can support you. Akeisha?
Sarah, if you already have, I'm pulling mine up right now. If you already have yours ready.
Yeah, I would say, follow us on social. I know I said it before, but I'll say it again. Follow us on social media at endmoneybond.org, and you can follow Chicago Appleseed at Chicago Appleseed. We post a ton about all sorts. I mean, certainly the trainings that we do and things like that, but also just keeping abreast of what's going on both on this issue and other criminal legal system issues in Illinois. That's how you can sort of figure out what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and you can follow Soul at Soul in Chicago on all platforms. We post a lot about the people who don't normally get voices in this issue. We highlight their stories often. And also, if you all are feel compelled, you can also drive letters to your legislators. If you look on the Coalition and Money Bond website, you'll see it there. We have a letter writing campaign currently in work, so please support us.
Okay, great. All right, well, thank you. I appreciate this. This has been wonderful. I'm glad we had an opportunity to go through this and to lay it out for the audience and others who may be watching around the country to look at what is possible with the groundswell support of the grassroots, and then collectively with organizations, hundreds of organizations coming together to really push something through that was vital for the community, for the state. So I thank you all for your efforts and your long haul to get this done, okay? And much success to you through the implementation phase when it kicks, and then the kickoff or the effectiveness of it, you know, when it kicks off in January 2023. So thank you. Thank you. Keep us posted, please. Just keep us posted, because this is fascinating to me. I like to see when things have been done from the grassroots level, because what that does is I think it gives people a sense of encouragement and empowerment that if we did this, then we need to keep going. We can do more, you know? So congratulations to you. All right. You're welcome. To our listening audience that joined us this morning for our discussion on End Money Bond and the Illinois Pretrial Fairness Act, thank you so much for joining us. We will be back on next Saturday for the next installment of the Justice Speak Talk Show. Take care and God bless.
Sovereign creator being.
Plan.